My name is Rajesh Narwankar. I lead the talent and culture team at MSL. And the person who would be moderating this panel, I'd like to invite Deepa Sapatnekar. She's the head of marketing for Bessemer Venture Partners. She's based out of Bangalore. She's right here. I will be handing over the mic next to her. I'll just invite her. Yes, I will do that after. Next up, I'd like to invite Meher Taj. She is Director Branding and External Comms at EYGDS, also based out of Bangalore. She's also a client with MSL. Thank you. Next up, Pranay Kotasthane. He is the chairperson and lead for high-tech geopolitical program at Takshashila Institute. Finally, we have Nandita Lakshmanan, founder and chairperson from the practice. She'll also be a member of the panel. Welcome. There you go. I'll hand over the mic to you, Deepa.
Hi everyone. I'm going to do the mean thing and hand it right back to Rajesh because we want to know why they did this to begin with. I believe, you can't improve something you can't measure, and I feel this is a good way to have benchmarks in place. But please tell us, why did you do this?
Okay. So this journey started in 2019 for MSL. So, thank you. So this journey started in 2019 for MSL. MSL proudly always calls out colleagues at the heart and center of all of its strategies, and that's where we wanted to find out what are the motivators for people when it comes to growth and learning. We set out on this journey where it was not just about compensation, but what is it that people seek as a motivator beyond that as well, which is represented in the survey as well. Now, apart from that, when it comes to the data that comes out of it, we didn't want to restrict it as a sample size that is towards an organization, but the larger industry. And finally, in collaboration with PR Movement, we wanted to extend, what are the insights that we are getting and contribute back to the industry as a community, so that everybody can come together and make better decisions and build a purpose towards, how is it that we can get better every day for our people and what will drive growth and learning for them. So that's the long of it.
So it wasn't just about the compensation, was it?
It isn't. It isn't. There is a lot more to the survey and the report than compensation.
That's great, but we're going to start with compensation, and for that I'm going to ask Meher and Nandita, because comms as well as PR side, they both represent that. What do you think about the rise in salaries? Are you surprised? What are your thoughts?
No, it's not a surprise. I think it's been happening for a while now, and especially with the lower bands, we've been seeing that rise. And I think I always say that it has to do with the number of PR schools that are emerging who set the bar for their students, and they kind of, just kind of put that and say, this is what our students are going to get. I guess it's tied back to the fees that they then draw from the students. I guess, standards of living are going up. Public relations as a function is becoming more and more prominent, and which is a really good thing. So I guess, this doesn't come as a surprise. But I think, Rajesh, just something for you, that discussions on compensation is not complete till we also have discussions around the fees that we get paid. So and I think it'll be interesting to see whether the fees have actually gone up over the years, because, and I speak as a mid-sized independent firm, and we have to compete for the best talent with the limited resources that we have. And if you're very good at training and you offer great training as a foundation for your colleagues, for your employees, you're also the best poaching ground for all the other organizations. So it's tricky, but I think we'll all have to learn to live with it.
I think the role itself is evolving from just being a media management thing, and it's becoming more and more integrated. In sense, Copcom professional now needs to do a bit of marketing, bit of advertising, needs to know PR management, needs to know effective communication, and the role is becoming much closer to the CEO's office. And so if you are that person who's working with the CEO and are taking care of effective communication and reputation of the organization, if you're coming with those skill sets, which are strategically important and imperative for the growth of the company as well as the reputation, I think you do deserve those kind of salaries and hikes. So I don't see as a surprise at all. I think it's all fair. The kind of talent you are, you get the worth of your salt.
And Nandita, do you think that the fees for PR agencies are increasing?
Well, it is not commensurate to the increase in the salaries. Let me just put it that way. And, you know, yeah, let me just stop there.
Well, we do have comms professionals here, and I would love to hear from you again, Meher. Like, do you think that given that the comms mandate overall is changing so much, do you think that would also result in increased agency fees?
It totally depends on the kind of talent and the competencies the agencies bring in. And if the competencies are there, I think it would compensate in your fees as well. And the other thing is also the PR, I mean, the corporate comms persons are also paid for negotiation skills, you see. So, I mean,
Yeah.
this is...
I think the problem is that the moment it leaves the rooms and the purview of the CopCom people and gets into the purchase, I mean, who have absolutely no clue about the value that public relations brings, and they're almost like bargaining for public relations as commodity. I think that's where the problem starts. Yeah.
And I think that's where the CopCom professionals within the organizations and the agencies need to work that out together.
Yes.
Clearly, and before you get into purchase. And well, if it stays here itself, I can say I do that with my agencies because I think they deserve to get the right remuneration, compensation for the work they do. Yeah, so that
Yeah, I agree, Meher, and I think, taking a cue from what Mr. Murthy said, that at some point, you just have to walk away because it just doesn't help, and it's going to more a liability than an asset to have particular brands who don't pay you that well. So.
Yeah. And I think we just, like, this dives me right into the next. And I'm going to get Rajesh to talk a little bit because it's just been us women talking. I want to make sure you tell us, like, why do you think the skill sets have changed? What are the top three in both? And what kind of trainings are available for both?
I think when it comes to skills and learning, while the survey was representative of what are the kind of skills and learning that an individual is seeking from, that's really the conversation that started out there, right? Individuals now are very, very clear in terms of the career goals that they are seeking within an agency or a CopComs function. And they also move at the same pace at what are the trends that they see. Learning, for example, just a few quarters ago would have been about crypto and NFT, whereas right now they would be talking to us about, hey, when is the next training on ChatGPT coming up? So that's the pace with which the world is also moving, the kind of skills that an individual wants. Second, when you look at even growth opportunities for an individual, they're not looking at vertical growth necessarily. They're looking at something that is horizontal as well. Fortunately for MSL, internally, what are the kind of gigs that you create internally? And not just a full-time push into a different role is important. And finally, even learning for that matter has changed significantly, because what used to be a lot more classroom style, which is still important, you need to have a learning culture, but it also needs to have that flexibility of self-paced learning. An individual seeks that now. They want to learn at their own pace. They want to learn through programs that are very, very credible, that keeps them up to date with what is required in the market. So I think skills and learning are moving at a kind of pace that we've never seen before, and it becomes an integral part of the conversation that goes beyond compensation, because an individual is seeking a lot more from their managers as well as their organization.
Nandita, do you want to comment a little bit on trainings that are provided to upgrade your employees?
I think in addition, as Rajesh mentioned, I think the pace of change is just so quick. organizations are unable to keep pace with that change. And public relations, those who succeed in PR must have a learning mindset. And therefore, waiting for the organization to provide you with all the training opportunities is just not viable. And I have so many colleagues, and I'm sure there's so many in our industry who are upskilling themselves, through all these other platforms, edutech platforms that exist. I mean, I did a course at Takshashila way back in 2014 when I took a brief sabbatical, and believe me, it was the toughest going back to studies after 23 years. But we just have to do that. And but at a foundation level, organizations, I think it's our responsibility to ensure that we provide for training. I think that's just a responsibility of ours.
Yeah, and we found from the report that it's agencies that definitely have more training. I'd love to hear from Nandita. Have you had any trainings recently? Sorry, from my head.
Sure. Oh yes, definitely. I think at EYGDS, I would say training is almost a culture. It's a lifelong learning. Is a culture over there, and more so because you need to continuously keep up with the pace. You need to know the newer technologies which are coming in, because you need to serve your business units. So as a CorpCom person, you need to really understand what's happening in each industry, because at the end of the day, while they would be giving you the inputs, you are the ones who are formulating and creating those thought leaderships for them. So you need to understand, and hence a continuous training and upskill is definitely required. And I think, but the other question is, are all organizations doing that? And to what extent are they doing? And does it really, I mean, as I read through the report, it said the PR agencies are training more than possibly the CorpCom professionals. And how I look at it is, most of the organizations actually invest in their core business or strength. For the PR agencies, I mean, training in various, sub-functions, cop tech is, communication tech is all very important. Again, but for example, if you take an IT organization, IT is their key function. So they invest more in the IT learning and on that IT talent and those assets. And are those functions within such organizations really investing in terms of, are they investing in corp communication professionals and so on? I'm not too sure that all the organizations do that. And more so, I also saw that it had dipped down in the survey. So my reading into it is most of the learnings would possibly come at events like this. And when pandemic hit, the events stopped and those kind of exchanges and learning stopped. And most of the people had to have that self-learning enthusiasm to go and pick it up, whether it is at a Coursera, at a Udemy and all that, if your organization is not investing over there. So, I mean, I'm really not surprised with the results saying that the agencies are investing more in the training compared to the CorpCom divisions in organizations.
Got it. And I'm now going to throw a question to our audience, just to check if you guys are still with us. How many of you believe that public policy should be included in communications? Show of hands. Okay, there are a few people still listening to us. Yes! With that, I'm going to hand this over to Pranay, who is writing a book on public policy.
Finished
and then
writing
we'll come
it.
back.
Finished.
Okay, launching a book. Okay, Pranay, take it over.
No, thank you. So I teach and research public policy at Takshashila Institution, and I have seen a lot of interest in recent years from the PR and CorpCom community, the number of people who are coming to our courses. So I guess the question is, what is it in public policy for a PR professional? So the way I think of it is, I think with the knowledge of public policy, you can increase the depth and the breadth of your work both. So by depth, I mean especially looking at stakeholder engagement and looking at government as an important stakeholder. So it's important to understand the government in granular detail so that you know about, what are the government's proclivities, what are the government's interests, priorities, and that helps in stakeholder management better. So that's like why the depth would be increasing. And the second one is the breadth increases because apart from the communications angle, a knowledge of public policy can also help you in going into policy writing, research, skills which are a lot in demand today. Public policy 2.0 in India is very different from what it was in 1.0. So governments now look at collaborating with the industry organizations, with industries. They want to know, they realize that there is less competence in the government, more outside. They want to collaborate with other industries in order to form better policies. So I think that's where the breadth angle also comes in. So I guess those are the two reasons why we are already seeing more interest in this field.
Would you say that it's increased quite a bit before 2019 or?
Yeah, quite a bit. Like I mean, there are people and in companies which are sending people to study public policy repeat way. You know, new people and more number of people. So it's increased, I think, in the last 2 or 3 years. That's a sudden rise, and I really don't know the exact reason, but these are the trends that I'm seeing.
Well, I think the audience just told us they think it goes together. But do you want to give us a sneak preview of your book? Can you give us like 2-3 things that you will be covering in your book?
Yeah, so the book is essentially called Missing in Action. I am a co-author. So the two of us write a newsletter called Anticipating the Unintended, and the book spawned out of that. Broadly, there are 2 or 3 simple things that I want to talk about. One thing, the book is about trying to come over some of the misbeliefs and misconceptions we have about public policy in India. For instance, we often judge policies by their intentions and not by their consequences. So that's one idea we put forward, why it is important to think about consequences. Intentions are a dime a dozen, right? I mean, you can't know the intention of a minister or a government. So you assume what the intention is, but you realize and you analyze a policy based on the consequences. So that's like one central idea. We also talk about the fact that there is no policy without politics. So politics is often thought of as a disgusting term, but there is really politics going on when 2 or 3 people meet, you know. So the idea is, how do you embrace politics? How do you look at and we see that in public policy also, government policies which might be very well intentioned, very well laid out, they don't work in practicality when they are not able to manage different stakeholder interests, especially of the people who are going to lose out because of a policy. So that is one angle we talk about. And the third broad idea that we have in mind is just about the Indian state as a whole. How the Indian state is trying to do too many things that it shouldn't, but not doing the core things that it should. And that's where the disconnect is. So Indian state is way more ambitious than it is competent. And that's what we are trying to talk about in the book, how we need a balance between the state, market and the society. We need the state to focus on certain things and leave the other things to the markets and the society to take over. So those are the key ideas.
Nice. And what would be your advice to all the comms people here? Like, what areas of public policy should they be focusing on? Like, should they look at Web 3, Web 2? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
No, I think technology policy is one area which is really core. I think there are some horizontal skills which would serve you well irrespective of the area that you're in. So writing, for example, being able to analyze a budget, for example, or being able to read a bill. These are things which will help across areas. And if you look at, say, the verticals, then yeah, technology policy is one area which is really from a geopolitical angle and from a government angle as well. Like I was just thinking about this, that MeitY, for example, the Ministry of Electronics and Information Technology, is probably the third most important department today in the union government after defense and finance, just because if you look at the list of things they are working on and the economy-wide impacts that their decisions will have in the next decade is phenomenal. Look at the Digital India Act, ONDC, or the digital public infrastructure, UPI, or you can talk about so many things which are going to have industry-wide impact. So focusing on technology policy as an area, and also the geopolitics around it now with US-China confrontation, this is one area I think is really interesting to look at.
Interesting. And Nandita and Meher, what do you guys think about public policy having an overlap with comms?
I mean, I think it's a very important area of focus because for most of the organizations, they are Indian-led Indian organizations or your foreign direct investments in maybe the MNCs and so on. It's a very, very important aspect because we need people who understand these policies, are able to build that reputation within the government, within the other agencies across for the organizations, are able to represent and bring in that kind of opportunities for the senior leadership of our organizations to be represented in the right forums. Because you know the scrutiny on organizations has increased, of late the scrutiny has actually increased and there are a lot of things changing in the regulatory environment itself. So public policy plays a real important role in that sense. So if the PR professional or the CopCom professional has this knowledge, it's an added advantage. And we are very clear when we are looking out for people. Like right now, I'm looking out for people to join me. And I'm very clear, do you have this particular skill set? It's a very important skill set. I mean, it is just not about lobbying and other things. It's about the overall understanding of the policy in a holistic sense and see how it impacts the business. And how could the business actually raise its voice and be a part of the policy formation and how organizations can be part of the policy formation.
I agree. And, when I studied public relations back in the 90s, we were taught that it has to have stakeholder engagement at the heart and center of everything you do. The publics was so important. I do feel that as a discipline, the biggest disservice we've done to ourselves is abdicating some of the important functions within public relations. Public affairs being one. And today you have a public affairs team, and then you have a PR team which does media or just supports the public affairs team, which is really a tragedy. And then you have CSR, which is an industry in itself today, and earning the goodwill of society and community was such an important part of public relations, and we've abdicated that. We abdicated internal communications, which is now a function of HR. So I do feel that here is an opportunity for us to reclaim some of those things, and for example, working with Takshashila or studying policy just helps you recognize the synergies that exist and how can we work together to make this so critical, because it is so important, not just for industry, I think for society and for us as an economy. So I do believe it's very, very important, and I'm all for reclaiming everything that belonged to public relations, which we just kind of let go.
No, I love that.
And I so agree with her, because what are corporates looking for? They look at the PR agency as in their extended arms. We are looking at those gate openers for us. And if the PR professional has this kind of skill set and is enabled to do that, I mean, the kind of remuneration, the kind of fee you are asking for is not far away. I mean, if you're able to do that, and that is what the corporates are really looking for. I do keep asking the team who works with me, I mean, how could we get into this? Whether it is, could be the government relationships. Second is on the side of the various industry bodies and associations. Lot of the business leaders want to be known as thought leaders within those associations and things. So how could you really get us out over there? So I think it's a very important skill, and if PR professionals are realizing this, it's a welcome thing, and I think I really feel happy about it. And like Nandita said, somewhere what was forgotten, and I think it is your territory, it is for you to reclaim it, and the time is now.
And one thing stuck when I did the course. We were given this list of books to read, and everything was so tough, so difficult. And Nitin, who founded Takshashila, said, if it is simple, it's not policy. I mean, it is tough, it is complex. So we don't try and simplify everything. And I think that really stuck. And the rigor, the discipline, it's it is something we need to practice in public relations.
I love that. Pranay, can you tell us how everyone here can get involved in public policy other than reading a book, of course?
Yeah, thanks. So, I would say it's important to get equipped in public policy. I mean, public policy in general, everyone has opinions. It's like we have an opinion about a cricket team or a football team. We also have opinion about what the government should do or shouldn't do, right? But public policy is the discipline which helps you put a framework around it and understand better what happens when government action is done in a particular area. Just look at a recent debate about this USB 3.0 being made mandatory. Now, it seems good, okay, why not? Everyone should have just one charger. But once you look at the policy analysis of it, you will realize that there are counterproductive consequences of imposing one technology going ahead. So such things you will know if you learn public policy formally. So there are many organizations now which offer courses. Universities, we at Takshashila offer certificate courses for working professionals, and there are also you can take full-time courses if you want to. So that's I think the first step to begin with. And once you do that, then there are various opportunities. People go into research at think tanks, or people work with MPs, people work with political parties now. So there are many opportunities which are now opening up. I would say there are lots of jobs now, not careers yet because it's a new field, but many jobs which have opened up at the intersection of public policy, public affairs, etc.
Interesting. So now we talked a little bit about compensation, actually a lot. We also talked about public policy being included and the kind of, trainings that are available. Let's talk a little bit about how the skills are evolving in both the PR world and the comms world. Do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure. I think, so there are the hard skills, and since the pandemic, things have really expanded. I think the scopes are changing. So there's the hard skill part of it, and then there is the soft skills. And a lot of what you saw, client servicing, CEO management, these are all like soft skills that one needs to get. So there's a lot of mentoring and coaching, and it's important to understand the difference between the two. So there's ample amount of coaching, but there's also mentoring required. I'm also a big believer that we need to start collaborating a lot more instead of trying to become this one-stop shop for everything. And I do believe that for skills like SEO, management, etc., there are already experts out there. And I think it's important to work together with them rather than kind of acquiring those skills. So, I mean, that is my perspective. So there's digital, which is big. But having said that, I do feel the reality on, the digital space is really growing. Social media management is a lot of what we do. We heard this evening about, performance marketing and all of that. At least that's not something our firm does. We would rather collaborate with others who are specialists in that field to deliver that to our client. But I do think that sectoral understanding is very crucial. And I'll say this, the beauty about public relations and being on, either in CopCom or on the PR firm side is the exposure that we have to the best in the business. I mean, all our clients are leaders in their own space. And if you just go beyond just doing what they're asking you to do, and try and understand the business, try and understand their best practices. I mean, that's a wealth of learning out there. And we need to kind of bring ourselves out of that myopia and kind of, really look at, when we onboard a client, what that client has to offer us. We work with the best in, say, future of mobility, in the EV sector, or in, the latest of technologies. But we are so caught up in just kind of amplifying what they do, that we forget to really immerse ourselves in the wealth of knowledge that our clients have. So I would say that is also something. So I think skilling and all of that's happening on a minute-by-minute basis, from the moment you open a newspaper,
And how do you feel about media relations just being table stakes now?
I was surprised to see that. I was really surprised to see that. And
Rajesh, I'll just take a crack at it by saying that when it comes to media relations. While the priority of it in terms of the respondents went down, I think there is a key balance that needs to be achieved in terms of your brilliant basics. I think an individual who might say that media is not important will also realize for a fact that it's a stressful job if you're not really great at understanding not just what am I pitching, but what is the story focus that the journalist is going to be focusing on in the next quarter or that publication would be. With that intelligence and brilliant basics of having learned, the fundamentals, one can deliver better. I see a lot of my leaders when they are approached by a lot of young colleagues, how do I approach this? The responses, although it may sound very simple in terms of response, are a lot more about those balance of brilliant basics. If you know what you're chasing, if you know the business objective, you're not going to have the backup of a specialist with you all the time who's going to tell you, okay, if the person is going to publish something in the BFSI space, but your client is FMCG, do you understand the financial metrics of your clients? What are you pitching for? So I think all of these come together. It cannot be just said for a fact that it doesn't matter. It's just that how you think about it and how well are you averse about it.
I didn't say it doesn't matter. I'm saying it's table stakes now. Like it is required. Absolutely. It's not even something people mention.
Correct.
So how do you feel about that?
Probably a different way to approach it is what matters. Your understanding about the client and their business objectives is a lot more important rather than only focusing a part of what you're pitching in terms of media relations.
And I also think it's all about the way the whole industry is changing. I mean, we've all moved digital, and it's just not about when you say media management, there's a lot of social media. People have, I'm so sorry. People have access to social media. I mean, everybody can go put out their opinions and things. So it's about managing a lot more. It's become much more holistic. It is much more encompassing when you're looking at these things. And even for that matter, pandemic has also changed the way you are interacting with the media and so on. So I think, I'm not saying it's not important, but I think other things are gaining a little more of importance in this place, and there is other things like your entire thing about an effective communication management, about writing is, you need to write and get your thought leadership out over there, and that's where understanding the sectors is much more important, because if you know the sector, if you understand the sector and you understand the media aspect of it, you can bring in your expertise itself. So at the end of the day, why do Corpcom teams reach out to various agencies? That's because it's not that because they cannot do it, but they need those experts who can understand the other part of the world too. And hence, if you understand both the worlds, you are the ones who, are extracting the best out and trying to build that reputation.
So sorry, Deepa. Amit is prompting me. Probably this would be the last question.
That is perfect, because I was just going to say that. Sorry, thank you for being with us. I'm going to open this up for questions. But before I go, I'm going to say, do you each want to tell us one sentence on what you think comms people should be focusing on, where you think the industry is headed? Because I think it's all positive.
I think they should just focus on the client's business and taking it to the next level, and almost get integrated with the client when you're working with a particular client.
Need I say more? But public affairs and public policy, it was already there in that functional skill. So great to explore new avenues.
I'll just say talent retention is going to be center stage as a part of your strategy for the next few years. That is going to play a very, very key role in terms of how we are not just managing reputation for the client, but also for our own brand.
I think this is by far the most exciting times for us, because we're seeing quantum change. It's not incremental, it's quantum. And, it is the only time when we can, like I said, reclaim a lot of what we are meant to do. So have utmost belief in public relations as the management discipline.
Does anyone have any questions? Questions, anyone? Raise your hand. Or do you just want to get to the drinks now? Yeah, absolutely. Okay. If no one has questions, and if you do, please raise your hands. But if no one has questions, I think the bar is already opened, and we will be around, so come ask us questions. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks,
you.
Rajesh. Thank you.